Where we're going to go right now because the George W. Bush new library is going to open there today for 8 years of his service to this country. And that's where we find Dana Perino, co-host of The Five, and of course the former White House press secretary under George W. Bush. Dana, this must have been a fantastic experience for you. I know you're going to have many more memories from today, but going back there not only to interview, or not only to see your former boss, but to interview him as well.
Yeah, we reversed roles a little bit, but you know, we really kind of had the Mutual Admiration Society, a wonderful look into the personal relationship and the man that I got to know over 8 years. And this reunion last night at the supper on the lawn at the SMU campus the night before this dedication ceremony was wonderful. Saw lots of people like Andy Card, Josh Bolton, Condi Rice, and many other friends and people that worked really hard in those 8 years. So today's a wonderful day of celebration.
And of course, the museum behind you is the repository of a lot of the stuff, 43,000 items from the Bush administration. I know a lot of it revolves around 9/11 and also a great portion about the war. And very famously, the President of the United States was there in Iraq and talking when somebody threw a shoe at him, actually two shoes. You wound up getting a black eye out of the deal, right?
Yeah, I was the only one who got hurt, and I got to ask him about that, and that interview is going to air tonight on The Five, but I think you have a clip of it here, right?
We do. Let's watch.
You had a particular belief in freedom of the press.
Absolutely.
We didn't get the best press coverage, necessarily, but you...
Gosh, I don't know why you said that.
And so you remember, obviously you'll remember that press conference in Iraq,
yeah.
The shoe throwing thing? I'm the only one who got hurt in the whole thing.
That's right.
But you were determined during that press conference, you were not going to end it without taking the questions from the reporters that were there.
Correct.
Why was that so important to you?
Because I think in order for democracy to function well, there has to be a vibrant press. And in Iraq, when the guy threw the shoe, I wanted to do two things. One, I didn't want to leave to give him a slight victory. Mm-hmm. In other words, President Bush had to leave the room, therefore I achieved my objective. But I also wanted to say to the young Iraqi press corps, I want to answer your questions. No, I'm a big believer in the press. I didn't like some of the stuff they wrote, but of course you have you don't have to read it. You know, you can just rely upon your press secretary. Not really. Yeah. I mean, I know it's in the news, but most of these opinion pages are pretty predictable to begin with.
He's right.
I agree. So Dana, when you talk to the president, do you think he's cognizant of the fact that his approval rating's gone from 34 to 47, and in some polls close to 50%?
Yes, I think he's pretty aware of everything that's going on at all times, as I learned. The amazing thing about President Bush that I wish I was more like is he has this ability to let history decide the legacy. This library is a wonderful tribute to freedom, all the things that he and Mrs. Bush held dear. Mrs. Bush is prominent throughout. And there's a 9/11 exhibit, Brian, that if you and the viewers have a chance to come to Dallas, you see at the beginning how the library was going to be really focused on education and economic growth, and you can hear the sirens in the background. And I talked to President Bush about that one as well with students at SMU.
Hello.
Hey, welcome.
Hey, I brought a special guest.
Welcome.
Hi, everybody.
Does this man does he need an introduction? Most of the people in this room, at this table, you were in first grade when 9/11 happened? Second grade. You've grown up in the shadow of 9/11 and the decisions that were put in place afterwards to help keep us safe. And I thought, Mr. President, that you could talk to them about what it was like to try to calm a nation and to figure out a way to protect the country's national security without intruding on the freedoms that we all enjoy.
The first decision I made after Andy Card whispered in my ear, America's under attack, was to project calm. Because if the leader of an organization in any way shows panic, followers will panic. The second thing people wanted to know was they wanted to see resolve. In other words, I resolved at that moment to do everything within my power and within the law to protect the country. There was a lot of other issues that we had to deal with, one of which was religious bigotry. So I went to a mosque shortly after 9/11 to send the signal that we cannot lose our values in the midst of human tragedy. Dana's right. We were very careful not to abridge civil liberties.
Those kids must have been so excited and shocked.
Yeah, the one when I first walked in, they thought I was the guest speaker, which I was surprised they showed up just for that. But when I brought him in, there was a young man just sitting at the head of the table, and as I sat down, I realized he was shaking. And I can understand that when you meet a president and a leader like President Bush, you can feel that way. And those kids had just finished reading decision points.
Oh, is that right?
So then he was able to come there and explain to them some of the decisions. And then after I left, he stayed for another 2 hours with them.
No, Dana, I loved the article you wrote, too, about your favorite memories. People should check it out. You talk about how he used to catch your eye during policy meetings and wink at you because you thought Dick Cheney was sleeping, but in fact, he ended up recounting every single detail of the meeting back. And tell quickly how he treated your dad like the King of England.
Well, my dad had not had a chance to come and visit me in those 8 years at the White House, 7.5 years that I was there. And there was a state dinner, and my dad, I got one ticket to bring with me. So my husband, who loves to go to these things, I said, I think I want to invite my dad. So my dad came, and it was his first black tie event. And President Bush knew that it was a big deal for me to have my dad there. Well, when we walked in, we saw all these great Italian Americans. It was a dinner for Berlusconi. And when we walked in to get our picture taken, President Bush dropped everything and said, Leo Perino, we have been waiting for you for 8 years, and we are so glad you're here. Do you want to meet Condi Rice? Have you met Mrs. Bush? Let's go see Dick Cheney. And he just took over from me, and I'll never forget that. In many ways, President Bush was like a second father to me. I think he was an excellent president, and I was honored to write that piece. It's at foxnews.com, just about my personal memories. Everyone else can hash out the successes and the legacy and the decisions. I just wrote about how I feel about him.
Right, so Dana, we're going to get more of those clips tonight and the whole interview on the 5, right?
That's right. There's a replica of the Oval Office, so I go in there and it felt like I should brief him, but instead I asked him some questions.
Well, great report. It's really old home week down in Dallas for Dana Perino because of the reunion last night and today as well. And thanks for dropping by Fox and Friends and sharing some of your thoughts.
Okay.
Dana, thank you.
I'll see you next week. 5. Bye.